Hi, I'm Christine Estima. I'm the author of Letters to Kafka and also the Syrian Ladies Benevolent Society.
I have a million questions how to ask all of them in this short amount of time. Um, when when did your fascination with Milana start?
Yeah, I love answering this question because it's strange even to me. It was
Mhm,
about 12 years ago, and I was living in the UK. I was
mhm,
living in London, and I was totally broke. I was not selling stories the way that I sell stories now. My career was fledgling, and I found out that there was a fellowship offered to European journalists. If you
mhm.
remember, the UK was part of Europe at this time
Yeah, before Brexit.
before Brexit. And if you were working on a creative project, you could apply for this fellowship and they would fund your project. And it was offered by a university that was based in Vienna.
Mhm.
And the fellowship was called the Milana Jasenskar Fellowship for Journalists. And so I applied for it. But it was in the application that I always remember thinking, like, well, who is Milana Jasenskar?
Yeah.
I'd never heard of her. And I was mispronouncing her name too. I was calling her Milena Jasenska. Like, I don't speak Czech.
You're so North American.
I know, exactly. And so, like, I didn't know. And so, I did a Google search and I came across a sparsely populated Wikipedia page and, maybe a few random websites like blogs and stuff. But I still wasn't satisfied. I don't know what it was. There was like something inside where I was like, I need to know more.
Mhm,
So I searched to see if there were any books about her. And there were, but almost everything was written either in Czech or in German.
mhm.
I was able to find five books that had been translated into English. And I think two of those books had actually been originally written in English. And so I bought all five.
Mhm,
And after I was done reading them, I was just like blown away. I was like, what an incredible life. What an
mhm,
incredible person. And what a shame that I had never heard of her.
mhm,
So Milena Jasenskar was a writer and an author and a resistance fighter in the early part of the 20th century.
mhm,
She was in the interwar period, she was living in Vienna, and she decided that instead of suffering along with everybody else who was suffering under austerity measures and sanctions after the Great War, that she was going to become a writer, which at the time was considered kind of frivolous
mhm,
because it was still then and frankly even today still kind of just considered a man's domain.
mhm,
And so she was originally from Prague. And so she had kind of, rubbed shoulders with the Czech intelligentsia of the time. And so she knew of Franz Kafka. Franz Kafka, wasn't the big name that he is today, but he was known in Czech and German circles. And so she wrote to him and asked him if she could translate his works from German into Czech.
mhm.
Kafka famously only wrote in German, even though he was also from Prague. And so it was in writing to him that not only did she become Kafka's first translator
Mhm.
ever, but they also struck up this epistolary love affair. And it is known that they met up twice for
Mhm.
two lovers' trysts, but we don't really know what happened during those trysts. There's like mentions and traces and shadows of it in like their letters to other people and in Kafka's diaries, but not really in any expository detail.
Mhm.
Um, in any case, Kafka passed away in 1924 after complications from tuberculosis. After he passed, Milena was instrumental in fighting the rise of fascism in Europe.
Mhm.
She hid Jews and dissidents in her home. She helped people escape over the border. She contributed to banned publications denouncing the Nazis. And it was because of that that she was arrested by the Gestapo in 1939 and she died in a concentration camp in 1944. After she passed,
Mhm.
Kafka's letters to her were published in a very famous book in the 1950s called Letters to Milena.
Mhm.
But her letters to him, we don't know what happened to him. They've kind of just like they've been lost to time.
Mhm.
And so in my book, I imagine what her letters to him might have said.
Mhm.
I imagine what might have happened on those two trysts. and the book is called Letters to Kafka. And I kind of find that it works almost in concert with
Mhm.
Letters to Milena. It's almost like a call and a response, but I've tried to fashion it in a way that you don't have to have read Letters to Milena to understand who she was, who he was, and what their journey was.
That's amazing. And there's so much mystery around that too. This incredible woman. And yet we know Franz Kafka. He
Yeah.
is the more famous figure.
And sometimes when you can hear a story from history or you learn about an historical figure, some people might think, wow, they should make a movie out of that. Well,
Hmm.
I thought, wow, someone should write a novel about her. And then
Yeah.
I realized, wait a minute, I'm someone.
Yeah, you.
And that's kind of when the all-consuming obsession started. And it's been 12 years.
12
Just
years.
absolutely obsessed with bringing her story to light.
So, walk me through how you were able to envision this woman who we really don't know much about other than a few facts, but facts don't actually create a fully fledged human with a personality and drives and desires. How were you able to imagine her and bring her to life? Because she just launches off the page in this novel. She really does.
Yeah, well, I think that there are a lot of things we can the issue with Milena's history
Hmm.
that she is not considered an authority on her own life.
Hmm.
Everything we know about her comes from the writings of other people.
Hmm.
For example, some of the books that I read about her, one was written by a woman who was incarcerated with her at the concentration camp.
Okay.
It was written by her daughter, but Milena died when her daughter was still a teenager, you know.
Hmm.
Another one, I mean, obviously the one I mentioned, the most famous one is Letters to Milena,
Hmm.
and because her letters aren't included there, you really have to look at the negative space
Hmm.
book. You really have to look at what he's responding to,
Hmm.
what he's saying to her, and and from there, from that negative space, you can try to extrapolate, what was going on there. So
Hmm.
you can see sometimes he's like, "Whoa, you accuse me of this, and that's not true." And other times he's just like, "Hey, how you
Yeah.
doing?" You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
so you can really kind of get a sense of the person there. But the great thing that we also have is her original articles that she wrote for several Czech magazines and newspapers um, were archived and translated into English, and
Hmm.
that was one of the books that I was able to read. And so we can get a real sense of who she was by what she's writing about for these Czech magazines. So it was very early on, so 1919, 1920.
Hmm.
She started, you have to remember, she's living in Vienna in like 1918, and
Hmm.
the Great War has just ended.
Yeah.
Didn't die in the Great War, then the Spanish flu epidemic finished the job.
Yeah.
And so the Austro-Hungarian Empire has collapsed. And so there are bread shortages and coal shortages and fuel shortages, and inflation is through the roof.
Hmm.
Vienna is a capitulated city. And so men are coming back from the front with hastily patched up faces and phantom limbs.
Hmm.
Respectable women are selling their bodies on the streets in order to support their families.
Hmm.
When Milena is writing kind of like her dispatches from Vienna to the Czech magazines, she writes things like the entire city smells like sauerkraut. You know,
Yeah.
when you walk into a soup kitchen, the bread is made with too much yeast, so it rises quickly and it's made with black flour. And the soup has too much barley in it.
Hmm.
And this whole city stinks, like men are pissing in doorways, and so are dogs are shitting in alleyways, and like things like that, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so when we think of Vienna today, it's very cosmopolitan. It's one of those cities that, harkens back to like Mozart and
Hmm.
Beethoven and also just the opulence of the Ringstrasse. And it's very ornate, it's very
Hmm.
sumptuous. But Vienna in 1918 was not. And so we can really get a sense of what she was concerned about, what was interesting to her from her dispatches as well. And when you go through, so part of my research was
Hmm.
also going through like any historical records I could get my hands on, right? So that's going through census records and voter rolls and declassified military files. I was able to interview one of her biographers during a trip to the UK. She was working for the BBC, but she had written a biography about 25 years earlier. And I was able to get in contact with her and I interviewed her.
Wow.
I did tons of research at the museums in both Prague and in Vienna, where there's like reading rooms where you can do further research. And a lot of research was done in situ. So, like, the great thing about Vienna and Prague is that despite the Great War and the Second World War, they only suffered minor damage in terms of structurally, you know.
Hmm.
So when you walk through Vienna or when you walk through Prague, it looks the same way it did 100 years ago when Milena was alive. So you can kind of accurately get a sense of like what it felt like on the streets, what it looked like. You can walk the same streets that she walked. You can visit the homes and the apartments that she lived in. You can visit the homes and apartments that he lived in. And with all of that together, that's how I was kind of able to build the world that I create in the novel, is that I really felt like, after 4 years of nonstop research, I really felt like, okay, now I know her.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if I hadn't done that level of research, I wouldn't have felt as comfortable. I remember 12 years ago when I first had this idea, there were many points where I felt like, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. It's just too
Too
much.
big. Yeah, it's big.
Because it's so overwhelming, the
Yep.
of details in the historical record. There's so many plot points that one has to hit because her life was as detailed and storied as it was.
Hmm.
And also not forgetting the fact that these were real people, and they still have relatives that are alive today. And
Hmm.
so you really want to do them justice. And so, yeah, building her voice was probably the most important thing to me because I just found that she had so much moxie,
Hmm.
so much gumption, and as you might say in Yiddish, she had chutzpah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I actually like I unflagged it this morning and I don't know why, but one line, oh my God, this is amazing. When she is being held, um, do not for 1 minute assume you can break me. I wouldn't even blink if my hair was on fire. What? I like So what was your way into this novel? Did you start like maybe writing her letters to Kafka? Did you start with a scene? How would you go about doing that? I have never written historical fiction.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I've never really written it either. I mean, Syrian Ladies Benevolence Society, my first collection, had definitely elements of historical fiction because the book begins in like the 19th century and then goes into the 20th century and
yeah.
all of that. But in this level of detail, no, I'd never done it either. I have to say, I never ever outline, but with this book, I was like, you need to outline.
Hmm.
I always felt previously that when you outline a book, it can stunt creativity because you feel like in the act of writing, any writer will tell you that suddenly the story takes you here or the story takes you there. But if you have an outline that you have to stick to, it can prevent you from doing that.
Hmm.
But that didn't happen here. I felt so much creative freedom to be able to fictionalize the story and take the story where I needed it to be at the same time while making sure that I hit the historical plot points that I needed to hit. So that's what I did. The first thing I did was draft an outline, and you should see, I still have the outline. Like I had to print it out because if I just kept it like in Word, it would be too, like I wouldn't be able, I'm better with the tactile
Yeah.
thing, So I printed it out. It's 20 pages long.
You could have a host a master class on outlining alone.
Well, actually, I wouldn't because the problem with my outline is that I would be like halfway through it, and then suddenly I would be like, no, this detail has to happen there. So if you look at my outline, it's completely out of chronological order, and there's like stars and arrows going here, and there's numbers where it's like this paragraph has to go underneath this paragraph, and like stuff like that. It's like crazy. So I would not give a master class doing my
Well, I don't know. I feel like so outlines, they are a living document.
yeah.
They really are constantly shifting and moving, as are novels in the process of bringing one to life. Um, but I'm also, so I have two questions. Which one to ask first? I know that Letters to Kafka was written before Syrian Ladies Benevolent Society.
Right, yeah.
What happened there?
It was really interesting. I actually finished writing Letters to Kafka before I started writing Syrian Ladies.
Hmm.
And my agent loved it and he was really excited about it. And so he pitched it to 40 different publishers across North America, and nobody wanted it.
When was this?
This was around 2019.
Okay.
Yeah, it was around 2019.
Okay.
And so the feedback we kept getting from all these publishing houses was, we love the book,
Hmm.
we love the writing, we love Christine, but I just don't think I'm the right editor for it. So I'm going to pass.
That's always the answer.
It's always the answer, right? And I remember asking my agent, I was like, what does that even mean? It doesn't mean anything to me, you know?
Hmm.
And he was like, it doesn't mean anything. They don't have to, they're not required to give you editorial feedback. They're just telling you they don't want it for whatever reason.
Hmm.
And after 40 different publishers passed on it, I thought the book was dead in the water.
Hmm.
And so I put it away and I was like, well, what am I going to do? Like, just cry into my soup every day? Like, no, I'm not going to rest on my laurels. I'll just write another one.
Hmm.
And so I wrote Syrian Ladies Benevolent Society, and that one was snatched right up.
Hmm.
And that was my first book deal. And then right before that book dropped, I would say the summer before that book dropped. So that book dropped in November of 2023. So I would say like June, July, September, the summer before it dropped in 2023.
Mm, okay.
Um, I was like, I'm sorry, this book is good. Like thinking of
Hmm.
Kafka, I was like, something is wrong here. And so I asked my agent, I was like, look, I know you've taken this as far as you can go. Do I have your permission to submit it to places on my own?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, that's fine. He's like, I think I can't take it any further. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I found out that there was a novel prize
Hmm.
being offered from an American publisher. And you could submit your manuscript, and if they liked it, you would win a monetary prize and publication.
Hmm.
Sound fantastic to me, you know. No one else wants this book. I might as well try this prize.
Hmm.
I submitted it to them, and they got over 500 submissions from around the world. And guess
Hmm.
who's in the top 10?
Of course. I'm
And,
not surprised.
and then they had to select a top three finalists, and guess who's in the top three?
Not surprised.
And so I was like, see, I knew it. I was like, the
Yeah.
book's not bad. The book isn't crap. The book is good. If I could beat out over 500 submissions from around the world to land in the top three,
Hmm.
the book is good. Like, I'm sorry. Like, no one can tell me otherwise. But they were taking the American publisher, they were taking a long time to get back to me about who won. They had hired a really famous American author to be the judge,
Hmm.
and it was just taking too long to get back to me. And I had found out there was another novel prize that I could submit to if I didn't win this one, but the deadline was coming up. And so I emailed them. I emailed
Hmm.
the American publisher and I was like, look, guys, um, can you just let me know if I got it, yes or no? Because there's this other prize I could submit to. No, no, no.
Yeah.
Within half an hour, they're like, can you call us? And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So I called them and they're like, okay, look, the guest judge came back with a winner and it wasn't you. But
Hmm.
everyone here at the publishing house can't understand why, because we all love your book. And they're like, we've all read it. We think it's fantastic. They even said it reads like a movie.
Hmm.
And and so they were like, look, we cannot choose two winners out of three because that's just terrible. It looks terrible.
Hmm.
But then they were like, but if your agent were to submit to us, we've already read the book. And so it was all very like tacit.
Hmm.
They were like, we're not making you an offer, but
But yeah, like
and
little hints. Yeah.
so I call my agent and I let him know what's going on. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I can submit to them for sure, but there's one issue. He's like, in your contract with House of Anansi, who was about to publish Syrian Ladies Benevolent Society,
Hmm.
they get what's known as right of first refusal. It's not really right of first refusal, but they get the right to kind of like read your next manuscript before anybody else does.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, yeah, but House of Anansi read this book a few years ago back in 2019 and they rejected it. And it's not my next book, it's my last book.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my agent was like, yeah, I know, but like as a courtesy, let's let them know what's going on. And I was like, yeah, that sounds fine. So we submitted to the American publisher and we submitted to House of Anansi.
Hmm.
Both came back with offers. And a small bidding war erupted, And so they were both kind of going back with my agent, like, we'll offer this, we'll offer this. And in the end, House of Anansi just offered a better deal.
Yeah.
So, and I'd already worked with them on Syrian Ladies and
Yeah.
be happy with them. I got to stay with my editor. I knew what they were capable of. And so it was a really easy decision for me.
They're a good publisher. I know that.
Yeah,
Phenomenal
and her
editors.
books like end up on, like winning all these
Lists.
awards and stuff, and they're internationally recognized. They have Patrick DeWitt, on their list.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so I love telling that story just because as authors, you and I both know we face so much rejection.
Mm,
Rejection is across the board.
yeah.
This is not an industry for those who, can't take
Faint
rejection.
of heart.
And so I think that I always say to people, like, no one is going to care about your book more than you are. So you need to advocate for yourself. My book was dead in the water, and the only reason it's seeing the light of day now is because of me. Not
Hmm.
my agent, not because of my connections, because of me. I believed in the book. I knew it was good despite 40 different publishers telling me no. And so you really cannot let rejection hold you back. You have to let it propel you forward.
How do you maintain that attitude? Because it is hard, and I do know you, and you do maintain it.
Yeah,
How?
it's a lot of blind optimism. It really is like you do have to be a little bit crazy. Like, not, I don't like the word crazy. You have to be a little bonkers.
Yeah, yeah, a little, left to center, right?
You kind of have to believe in things when common sense tells you not to.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. I could never imagine any other life for myself. This is all I've ever wanted to do my entire life. I was writing short stories in kindergarten, in grade one. And I remember in grade four, we had to write short stories, and the kids were turning in 2 pages, 3 pages. I turned in 40.
Yeah.
I was always doing it. There was never a plan B for me. And so if there's no plan B, then it's either, shoot for your dreams or accept what has befallen you. And that's actually a theme in Letters to Kafka. There's a refrain in the book that goes, you have two choices in life. You can either accept one's fate or seek one's fate.
Hmm.
My whole writing career has been not about accepting what has been thrust upon me. Rather, I always find an avenue out of that. You really do kind of have to have a blind faith.
Where does that, so talk to me about rejection then, and the whole, the psychological impact it does have, because you face rejection, I face rejection. A lot of listeners and viewers are probably going, yeah, same, same. But we see a lot on social media, on, Goodreads, that sort of thing, all of the wins. We see so many wins. But you have a story behind trying to get Letters to Kafka out there into the world. And thank God it's out there into the world because it's a beautiful book. Talk to me about the impact of rejection on you.
Oh, it's a soul destroying siege. It's
Okay.
it's absolutely devastating, you know? It's pride destroying. Like
Mm,
I remember when Letters to Kafka was on sub originally with my agent.
hmm
And in one email, he had sent me like, it must have been at least 10 rejections in one email that he had copied and pasted. And it was like, boom, boom, boom. And I was with my partner at the time, and we were on this amazing road trip through Northern Ontario, and we
mm,
were about to board the ferry to Manitoulin Island.
hmm
We're at the dock, and I am sobbing into his chest. Like he had to hold me for half an hour.
mm,
He's absolutely sobbing because this book was years in the making,
hmm
years of my life, years of investment on the off chance that it might get picked up, you know, with an industry where less than 1% of manuscripts are published.
Yeah.
And so many brilliant authors are never published and never
hmm
see the light of day. But I just couldn't accept it. I couldn't understand. I was like, I knew this book was like my, as we say in French, my chef d'oeuvre. You know, I knew what that means masterpiece. I knew it
hmm
was my masterpiece, you know, not to sound, that sounds
Yeah.
like there's a lot of hubris in that statement, but really I had to believe it was in order for me to keep going, as I mentioned earlier, just kind of, you know, putting your blinders onto the reality and just keep going.
hmm
During that rejection, it was devastating. But really, I had to remind myself that, like, okay, have your pity party. You're
hmm
allowed to feel this pain, but don't wallow in it. Don't just let that stop you. I have met so many writers and authors over the years who were much better writers than I am.
hmm
They would get a stack of rejection letters, and then they would be like, well, this isn't for me,
Yeah.
you know? And it's like, you're in the most competitive industry. Everybody
Yeah.
wants to be an author. It's like, I think that writing and also acting, those are the two most competitive industries. Everybody wants
Absolutely.
to be a star.
hmm
Everybody wants to write the great Canadian novel.
Yeah.
And you have to have thick skin and a stiff upper lip. And I don't always have that. My mother always tells me that I'm way too sensitive. And I am when it comes to things in my personal life and in my private life.
hmm
But when it comes to my professional life, I think I infused a lot of that into Milena, into the book.
hmm
So that line that you read out where I wouldn't even blink if my hair was on fire, you know, that's something that I feel quite often. I
hmm
actually said that to somebody once before I ever wrote the manuscript. This was this is a funny story. I don't know if you'll include this, but I love this story.
I love funny stories.
Okay, so about 6 or 7 years ago, I sold a story to the New York Times.
hmm I
And
remember that story.
yeah, and my career suddenly had this boost of interest, and I was doing really well. And this Canadian literature blogger based out of BC
Mhm.
emailed me, and he was like, you know, I read your New York Times story. Can I interview you for my blog? And I was
Mhm.
like, sure, send me the questions, no problem. And he sends me the questions, and they're all about my Instagram.
What?
They're not about writing at all. And all of his questions were like, yeah, so you're pretty. So
What?
do you think that you're only getting published because editors think you're pretty? And
What?
your Instagram, do you think it's working against you to be taken seriously? Because I have a fucking face, apparently. Like, how dare I have a face? You know,
Does he know? Did he read your work? Does he know you?
I
Does
had
he know
no
the trap he's walking into?
no fucking clue. But I was livid. He would never say that to a man. How
No.
many male authors are like also like, oh, like People magazines, like when they have the sexiest like list, there's always like an author in there, and it's some man who's like he's from Atlanta and he wrote this one novel and he's on a yacht with his shirt off. And it's
Mhm.
like no one would ever say that to a man, that their Instagram is degrading their value as a writer. But because I'm a woman and I was
Mhm.
born with a face,
Yeah.
somehow I'm less valuable as an author. Or I just loved the assertion that,
I
you
love
know,
this.
editors, the only reason I'm getting published is because editors want to stick their dick in me. Like, excuse me, but first of all, heteronormative, all my editors are women. Second
hmm
of all, I've never met like 90% of my editors. Everything is done in email these days. I like I just sold a story to an Australian magazine on the other side of the planet. No idea what that woman looks like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you never meet them, you never speak to them on the phone, you never FaceTime them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And any writer who has
Mhm.
ever worked with an editor knows that they don't give a flying fuck what you look like. They care about good copy.
Is it clean?
Is it clean copy? Is
Yeah.
it telling a story? Can you meet a fucking deadline?
Yeah.
That's what they care about. They don't give a shit if you're pretty. They
Yeah.
literally don't care because that's not going to sell papers because it's your words that sell the papers, not your
Mhm.
face. And so I was livid. So I wrote back and I was like, I basically tore him a new asshole. And I said, kind of along the lines of what I made Milena say, which was like, don't think that you can send me a thinly veiled list of like,
Misogynistic.
misogynistic, sexist
Yeah.
critique. Think that you can make me nervous. I wouldn't even blink if my hair was on fire. And then I added a PS and I was like, by the way, only one space goes after a period, not two.
I'm so badass. I want to dive in then into what it's like being an author on the internet because we are told we have to have social media and a lot of the time now, and I hear this mostly, I think, from the publishing world in the US, is that agents and editors, the first thing, other than looking at your submission or query, the next thing they're going to do is go search you on Instagram or TikTok, and they want to know the amount of followers and what kind of brand you are, because they're trying to sell a brand too. What is your take on that, and what is your feel of being an author on the internet?
It's interesting because I hear that a lot too. Like
Hmm.
a lot of emerging authors who have been on sub have said in a lot of like the online forums that, kind of populate the internet that like they said that they like the manuscript, but I don't have a Twitter account or I don't have an Instagram account. So they didn't.
Hmm.
I have never encountered this in my career.
Hmm.
Granted, because I'm a millennial. I have been on almost every single social media platform for quite some time.
Hmm.
I've abandoned Twitter. I'm not on there anymore. But when I was like, there was a time about 15 years ago where my Twitter was getting me writing gigs. Like
Hmm.
my tweets would go viral, and then an editor would DM me and be like, can you turn this into an essay and hand it in to me tomorrow? I'll give you 500 American dollars. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
you know? And so that has happened. I have been able to parlay my social media platform into writing gigs, but I have never encountered in terms of like the fiction world and the prose world and the literature world, someone saying like, we're only going to publish your short story because you have X amount of followers on Instagram. That has
Yeah.
never happened. And I don't really understand that because I understand that social media, like book talk is a big deal. I get it. Like
Hmm.
walk into Indigo, there's literally a table there that is
Yeah.
labeled book
Book
talk.
talk.
But I'm not on TikTok. I do not, I cannot handle another social media account,
Oh my
Not
God.
so I'm not on there. I'm on Instagram. And so there's Bookstagram, the hashtag Bookstagram. I'm part of that.
Hmm.
But, I don't know. I think that it's such a shame. I think it's a shame. I understand the marketing aspect. I do. But really, at the end of the day, you cannot expect a creative,
Hmm.
an author, to also do their own marketing. But that is the nature of the beast. Unfortunately, the way that things work now is that authors are expected to do a lot of their own marketing. And so many authors are not like you and I, where we're kind of comfortable in the social media sphere.
Yeah.
Of them don't know where to start. A lot of them are incredibly introverted and aren't comfortable doing public speaking, or they stumble over their words, or they just don't feel comfortable in that arena.
Hmm.
That's fair. And I think it's a shame that they're kind of expected to have like over X amount thousand followers in order to
Yeah.
do a deal. And if any, I swear, if any publisher ever said that to me, I'd be like, you need to go eat a bag of dicks because, I'm not here. You
I
know what I
love it.
mean? Like, I'm
I
not
love it.
right. sales up to your
Yeah.
social media platform. I'm here to, I have a voice and I have a talent and I have stories that I want to tell. And you're telling me I need to, fucking
Yeah.
do one of those like jump clip videos where I'm just like, hey, my book, hey, and whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I'm happy to do that when I choose to do that, not when it's like this is part of your contract or something. Like,
Do
I
you
don't
think men would be asked to do that? Men authors? There would be a difference?
interest. I never considered
I
that.
don't know.
That's an interesting question. I don't know. What I do know is there is an author who I used to know. We used to hang around the same social circles in Toronto. He's since moved to the States. He was able to get a book deal with one of the big publishers
Hmm.
in the States. And I stopped talking to him like a long time ago. But when I found out he had a book out, I was like, oh, let me go see what he's saying about it. No social media presence.
Yeah.
And it's so obvious that his publisher built his web page. And it's literally his website is one page that's like you
Mhm.
scroll all the way down. And there's literally like it's an old photograph of him. It's old reviews. The web page hasn't been updated since the book came out 3 or 4 years ago.
Mhm.
No social media presence. And he
Mhm.
got reviewed in the New York Times, And so it's like, I don't know. I don't know if male authors have to do their own social media in that sense. But I will say though that like literature is one of the few industries that is dominated by women.
Mhm.
So it's an interesting question to pose for the men that are in the industry, the kind of expectations there.
Yeah.
I really don't know.
And nowadays, it's not, I mean, a review in the New York Times is definitely a feather in your cap. But at the end of the day, it actually doesn't really sell that many more copies than, say, Book Talk, going viral on Book Talk or
Is
going
that right?
viral. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those reviews are not. And who is it I was watching? The Shit No One Tells You About Writing, one of their reels. Carly Waters had said something about one of her, I guess, hot takes, but I'm not really sure it's a hot take, to be honest, or unpopular opinion, is that um, author blurbs, those blurbs, they look lovely on the cover of a book, and you have an author blurb page inside, that they actually don't sell books, do away with them
Really?
because of social media. Yeah, it's wild. I'm wondering, do you think anything about that? Do you have a thought on that?
That's interesting. Honestly, what you're saying about like how a New York Times review won't sell a book, but Book Talk will, and so you don't need blurbs, like focus on social media.
Yeah.
That's really interesting to me. I've never like I don't know, maybe I'm too elderly, a millennial. I'm
You're the old canon.
like literally I am an elder.
You will respect me. I'm an elder.
I'm like, so for me, realizing like that, like, really, a New York Times review won't sell a book, like that to me is like mind-boggling. I
Mhm.
honestly, I'm gonna have to sit on that for a bit. I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
think about that because I'd never considered that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, I technically have statistics about, reviews versus, a popular book talker, bookstagrammer, with 100,000 followers, because they can definitely sell books. There's reasons that they get these beautiful marketing book packages
Yeah,
from publishers now, that I would bet that they do sell like dollar to dollar New York Times review versus, viral book talk. The viral book talk will sell more books.
yeah,
I would bet, and which is changing things a lot. And hence, going back to social media and authors being on social media, and how, you would feel about that, which, yeah, let's talk more about that. So when you've had a think,
I need to think.
yeah, it's interesting how the industry is changing, which is also why I was wondering when Letters to Kafka was first rejected,
Yeah.
2019. Is there a different landscape now in publishing that has an appetite for Letters to Kafka?
I mean, I don't know, but I have to say, maybe I've never encountered those kinds of comments from publishers because I always had a large social media following.
Yeah.
I've kind of come with a built-in fan base because I have built like the social media following where you can count on me to be sassy and to like destroy, incels' egos. My social media has literally been written about in McLean's.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
That
Like,
tracks.
so like it maybe that's why no publisher or magazine or newspaper
Mm.
ever said to me, "Yeah, we like this, but why don't you have a this or a that?" Because I always had it. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not something I've encountered. And I really honestly I think it's just terrible if an author does encounter that. It's such crap. I think it's crap.
Yeah, I think a lot of authors would probably agree with you and people who work in the industry too.
Yeah.
But again, this is the beast that we're
And
dealing with these days, right?
like, yeah, you really have to be your own hype person.
Yeah. Away from all the shit that is this industry, I'm wondering what is a win for you? What are the wins in being an author? What do you thrive off of? New
Ooh,
York Times review, other
that's
than that.
interesting question. I don't think I'll need my therapy session this week.
Sorry.
This is
Come
what,
on my podcast.
you know what I mean? It's just like, so how do you feel now that your book is coming out? You know what I mean? It's like, ooh, okay, my psychologist. Um, what do I get from it? I mean, I guess I've always just, I've always felt like I'm an artist. This is how I express myself. I've always felt like as an artist, that there are these, I'm sure you feel the same way. There's just these stories within you that need to come out. And whenever an idea strikes, even when I was a little girl, it was always like, you have to tell it, you have to tell it, you have to tell it. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know what it is. I remember one time I was traveling to the United States, and you know how in Toronto at the airport here, you actually go through American customs here rather than
Mhm.
in the States.
Mhm.
I was going through customs here, and the immigration officer was like, "You're an author." And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "So my son is
Oh, Jesus.
interested in being an author, but I don't get it. Where do your ideas come from?" And I was like, I made a joke out of it. I was like, well, you've heard of the Italian nation and you've heard of the French nation. Well, now discover the imagination.
Okay, I'm making that into a reel and it's going to go viral.
And I was like, I don't know where ideas come from. They just appear. And I've always just been the type of person where I can tap into that creativity.
Mhm.
So I don't know. That's always been the biggest payoff is being able to share my thoughts and my ideas and my viewpoint and my style and my voice with
Mm.
a wide audience. I've just always felt that those aspects of me deserve an audience.
Yeah.
And so I think that is probably that's all authors want. Authors want to be read.
Yep.
And like we want to be paid, but we also want to be
I
read.
mean, let's not ask for too much.
I know, God. But yeah, I mean, authors, it's a drive within us just to be read. And
Mhm.
after the Syrian Ladies Benevolent Society came out, I started fielding a lot of comments from readers in my inbox, and they were saying things like, this really meant something to me, or I just loved what you did here, and like this made me cry, or whatever. And I was like, what greater compliment is
Yeah.
there? Like there is nothing else. You could not pay me a better compliment. And if I've achieved something like that, then I think I've achieved everything I ever wanted. And I
It's a
always remember
rush.
saying before I got a book deal, I was like, if I'm ever able to have a book under my belt, then
Mm.
anything I achieve after that will just be the cherry on top. It'll just be
Mm.
gravy. And now I have to.
Let's talk about the dedication. I highlighted it, I hearted it, and I put it on, speaking of social media, I put it on Instagram for Letters to Kafka. This book is dedicated to every woman throughout history whose baptism by fire gave a lovely light. Where did that come from?
Well, I mean, I am kind of paraphrasing that really famous poem.
Hmm.
The poet's name escapes me at the moment, but I know the poem off by heart. It's my candle burns at both ends, it will not last the night, but all my foes and oh my friends, it gives a lovely light.
Mm.
And that's really kind of how I feel about not just being an author, but also just about Milena's life.
Hmm.
that there are things that we go through in life that are incredibly difficult. Milena is an extreme case, obviously, because she died in a concentration camp. But, there is, after, time, you are able to see, wow, all of that led me to this. With the
Hmm.
benefit of time, you can kind of see that. And in writing this book, I was burning the candle at both ends.
Hmm.
Um, and it gave a lovely light.
Beautiful
Hope is
name.
a lovely light. And but I also think that women historically have had to have a baptism by fire, that is
Mhm.
quite often forgotten to history. Like someone pointed it out to me that if Milena had never met Kafka, everything she went through would have been forgotten.
Yeah.
Her would be forgotten to history. It's because she knew Kafka that she is remembered, if she is remembered at all. Um, and that to me is such a shame.
Hmm.
Women, the things that we suffer through in silence and what we've had to endure for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years, and we're still enduring to this very day, um, they deserve that kind of recognition. And so that's why I say, if you're going through a baptism by fire, just keep
Hmm.
going through hell. One day it'll give a lovely light.
So, speaking of ongoing, what's next for you?
Well, I've been working on a new manuscript. I don't want to give away too much, but the kind of ethos behind this manuscript is it again kind of deals with what it's like to be of an ethnicity where you're like of the global majority,
Hmm.
but you're born in Canada. And so
Hmm.
you're born and raised in Canada, and you kind of look around and like none of the other kids in the classroom look like you.
Hmm.
They don't understand, the kind of terms that you use because you don't say grandma and grandpa, you say something else,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
things like that, that you can kind of feel like, well, I don't really fit in here in Canada.
Mhm.
But then you go back and you travel to your family's ancestral country and you don't fit in there either because you don't speak the language or you weren't raised there, you don't get the cultural references, you dress a little differently, whatever.
Hmm.
And there can be this feeling of like, well, I don't fit in back home and I don't fit in here. Where do I fit in?
Hmm.
And so maybe it sounds a bit twee, but I'm kind of working with the idea that maybe the only place you'll fit in is like here.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of the ethos behind the new manuscript. I was working on it during a writer in residency that I just did at a
Hmm.
gallery slash library slash bookstore. And I got a grant to like work on it. So that's kind of what I'm working on now. I'm about 160 pages in. So we'll
Nice.
see. But I don't know what's going to happen with that. I haven't, obviously, it's not on sub. Like I haven't
Hmm.
even shown my agent anything about it. I just kind of want to finish a draft before I even think about that. But that's kind of what I'm working on now. So fingers crossed if Letters to Kafka performs the way I hope it does and
Hmm.
lands and kind of makes some sort of impact, then maybe I'll be able to have another book out soon.
Yes, everybody needs to buy a copy, borrow one from the library. Hopefully there'll be an audiobook because this one deserves an audiobook. It is in my top of 2025 to read. Thank you, Christine Estima, for being here. You are a lovely light. Your baptism by fire brought you here.
It was so great to chat with you. I'm so happy to be here.